Matthew 16:18. Jesus said, "Upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." It was based on the confession that Peter made about who the Lord was, the deity of Jesus, that he was in fact the Son of God. He looked at Peter and said upon that confession he was going to build the church, the everlasting kingdom, the spiritual kingdom in which we are a part of. He also told him that he would give him the keys of that kingdom. Whatever he bound on earth would be bound in heaven. And we recognize the authority given to the apostles. Now that kingdom requires us to do certain things. And if any man desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. One of the things that we've been talking about on Sunday night here for the last few Sunday nights is the text that Shane read. We'll be referring to that throughout tonight's lesson. Maybe we'll wrap up some of the thoughts that I've been thinking about tonight, or maybe next Lord's Day night there may be another lesson in this text, but this may be it. But whosoever shall save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. To save your life in this text is to not change your life. To save your life is to not deny yourself. To save your life is to not take up the cross and follow God. To not deny yourself. You are saving your life for the purpose of fulfilling your life and the desires that you want. There's an attitude of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. The Epicureans, the Greek philosopher Epicurus, his goal in life, that was his philosophy, really was to find happiness, to maintain that happiness in this life. That was a conclusion that he actually came to. And really that's the conclusion that a lot of folks have today about life. And really it was a test that he had, and that test in his life. And he found out that that was the conclusion. Just live it up, all that you can, because this life was all that there was going to be. But it's wrong. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we will die, but after that the judgment. And of course those that were not in obedience to God, God will judge. But you lose that life that you're trying to hold on to. That's what Jesus is saying here in this text. And life here in this verse is more than just breathing. Life here is eternity. And that's what Jesus is talking about. Life here is something special that you have to lose yourself in Him. You have to lose yourself. In other words, you need to reach in the depths of your soul, in the deepness of your heart, and you need to love Him with all your strength, with all your heart, with all your mind, all the resources that you have. And it means you deny your life to live for Him. Now, this presentation, I think, is an ongoing thing. This I'm going to live for Him is not a one-shot deal. When you present your life, when you give your life to Him, it is truly your life. It is an ongoing thing. And really, it's a paradox here. If you're going to gain your life, you're going to have to lose it. Now, that doesn't make much sense. You lose yourself in Him, and in doing that, in the text, you gain what is offered. That's what he's talking about. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but he loses his own soul? Now, let's understand what he says by gain and profit here. He says that you're going to gain or profit, going to make profit, you're going to have profit. Now, in order to have any profit, profit takes an investment. It takes an investment of capital. We're going to invest something in order to have gain. We need to remember that. And in this investment that we're making in life, that investment that we're going to have whatever is at the end of this investment, this enterprise that we're taking on, it's free will. Nobody is wrenching your arm in order for you to make this investment. Now, I think that the kind of investment that Jesus is talking about life and about Him and about eternity, I think it requires at least three things. And one of those things is that we need to desire that. We must desire to go after whatever's being offered here. We need to recognize that in all of us, there has to be a desire that comes up and says, I want this. Now, it's taken me a while, brethren, but I'll tell you that if you want to go to heaven, you can go. You will go. If you want to be lost, you will be lost. It's as simple as that. There has to be a desire in each of us that we want to go to heaven, that we actually want to do this, that we want to give our life to God. Secondly, I believe that it requires focus. I believe that a determination. Once that desire is there, you begin to concentrate on different things. Hebrews chapter 12, the writer there says, verse 1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely to us, the sin that besets us. Let us run," he says, "with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus." Our concentration needs to be on higher things. Our concentration needs to be on the Lord. You need to desire it. You need to change your focus and have that determination, concentration on a certain and specific thing. A lot of times when we talk to people that have become unfaithful to the Lord, that have left the church, left the Lord, and a lot of times the conversation is a waste of time, because 99 times out of 100, a lot of times those folks you go to see, they've already made up their mind they're leaving. They've decided that it's not for them, they're not going to do it. And sometimes the questions that I ask are redundant. It's like, when is the last time you thought about Jesus? When is the last time you concentrated on spiritual things? When is the last time you prayed to God? And all of those that seemingly become unfaithful really lose that focus and lose that determination. Third thing I believe is required is simple work. Hard work. If we're going to make profit, I don't care what endeavor you're going to talk about, whether you're out to make a little bit of gain, whether you're out to make a whole lot of gain, it's going to require some work on your part. You're going to have to be willing to do that work. You can't sit and watch profit happen. Profit doesn't happen that way. It requires effort. You can't sit still and watch gain happen. It doesn't happen that way. You have to get off the couch and you have to hustle. "Father, give me this day my daily bread." What do you do after that? You go get it. Now, God will always do his part as long as we do our part. This is in terms of how we live here as well as spiritual things. Now, you want to be careful now. Salvation is by the grace of God. We're not going to work out our salvation. That's not what I'm preaching. And don't go that angle. I believe that everybody needs the grace and mercy of God. That's the only way that we're going to make it. It's a free gift. Air's a free gift, but you've got to breathe. You've got to do with the things that God has given you, the abilities and the opportunities that you have. You're going to have to be willing to apply them, work with them, grow in them, and you'll see a big change in your life. God will see a big change in your life, and you'll see the profit in those areas in your life. Now, inferred in the text that Shane read also is, I think there's a strong desire there for the world. We need to be careful. Never underestimate the attraction of the world. The world with all its baubles and beads and hooks and all of that, the devil knows how to dangle those things in front of each and every one of us. And we need to be very careful about that. I believe that we're in constant danger, not just every once in a while, of being seduced by the world. The world attracts in three ways. It attracts when we accept it. As far as that, number one is an attraction. That attraction, that acceptance or tolerance, and then we're addicted. In 2 Samuel chapter 11 is the story of David and Bathsheba. And we know that he was out strolling around on the rooftop, and he looked down and he was attracted to Bathsheba. And then he just asked around, who's the woman? And we know what happened. The sin that took place because of that, he sent for her. And that all started, though, and the point I want to make with that is that he was attracted to her. Now, some scholars and different, everybody has different ideas about a lot of the different things that the Lord said and taught about in parables. But you know what? How did the prodigal know what was on the other side? He longed for the money. He got the money, his inheritance, and he went out and we all know what he did with that. But what enticed him to do that? What attracted him to do that? And some say that there were merchants that, we did business a lot different in the Lord's day. There were merchants that came to, especially those that were rich and wealthy, sold their wares. Maybe he heard stories about how it was in the big city. Maybe he heard stories about how it was in other places. But whatever it was, that was instilled in the prodigal that he wanted it then, his inheritance then, and he wanted to go see that. All right, so you take David, you take the prodigal. Step one, they were attracted. Now, if we're attracted to something, maybe the light ought to go on for us. And it could be all right. But there's a danger sign for us there that this is how he's working. Number one, we get attracted. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27. Give no place to the devil, Paul says. Well, I can't keep birds from flying over top of my head. I just can't do it. But I can keep them from landing in my hair. All right? We can do that. Now, I can't keep the devil out of my life. He's everywhere. He's on TV. He's at school. He's where I work. He's where I live. He's everywhere. But I can keep him from, I don't have to give him a place to sit down in my life. And that's the point. We need to be careful. We don't need to give him that place in our life. Well, place of residency. So, attraction. Now, what happens then? We need to be careful that that attraction does not lead to an acceptance or a tolerance. Now, we'll give a little bit of residency to Satan. And then what happens then is, what if? What would it be like? Wonder what that'd feel like. Wonder what it'd be like to do that. And you think about the different things. Peter, eyes full of adultery. What did the Lord say? That if you look upon a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery. What's happening is you're beginning to slowly accept those things, and given the opportunity, you will actually do that. You're attracted, and then we begin to tolerate sin in our life. What James says in James chapter 1. James chapter 1, verse 13. He says, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then the desire, when it is conceived, gives forth birth to sin. And when sin, when it is fully grown, he says it brings forth death. Now, here's the devil's work. If you look at the text, here's his outline. You're going to participate now. What he tries to do, he tantalizes you, enticed, and really it's just one big entrapment. What looks good to you, and then there's slowly an acceptance to that. Then you tolerate that. You give it a place. Then you look for a way to fulfill what you have tolerated each and every time. When you go fishing, you just take a hook and you take a string, you take a pole, and you go down to the fishing hole. I almost made a song, funny. Anyway, you go there and you put that in the water, and you know what happens, don't you? A fish comes along, and he sees that hook. And he says, well, looks like somebody's fishing. I think I'll bite that hook. And then he bites the hook, and you catch the fish, you fillet him out, and you go home and you have supper. Now, if you think that's how fishing works, I got some land I can sell you. Here's what happens. You get this plug, and it's all shiny. It's got blood stains on it. It's got a little fluorescent deal on it. It's got beads on it. It's got propeller on it. It's got all kinds of things that look really, really interesting. You put that on your line, and you throw that out there in the water, and then that sun comes down shining on top of that surface bait, and you twitch it a little bit, and that fish sees that thing. And he thinks, I wonder what that is. So there's an attraction there. He's enticed by it. And he might go up and nibble on a little bit, and maybe that little feather, that string you got on there. And he starts to tolerate that thing. And then, I don't know if a fish mouth waters or not. Do you? So he's really into that. And before you know it, boom, he hits that thing, and you've got him hooked, line, and sinker. And I'm going to tell you something, brother. That's how sin works. That's how the devil works every single time. You mark it down. Every time. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. I know I've mentioned that in the last few Sunday nights, but I want us to read that again. It interests me the way that is. Likewise, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. He says this, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, we talked about that. The devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Now, we talked about he being averse to all things that are good. And I don't understand, and I had to look into it. It's like, you know what? A roaring lion, I'm going to see that guy. If the devil approaches me, and I thought, that's not how he does me. Because I'm going to be aware of a roaring lion, you know. Well, how does that work? Well, here's the lion. And do you know that a lion will stalk its prey for days? 3 or 4 or 5 days, a week, whatever it takes, a lion will stalk his prey on padded feet. You never hear it. You never see it. All right? And then what happens when that prey gets exactly where that lion wants it? Up against a tree, a rock, a cliff, a body of water, somewhere where the lion wants its prey. Then the roar happens. That gargantuan roar, and what happens to the prey? You know what happens? Freezes in its tracks. And then it's at the mercy of the lion. That's how Satan works with you. And it'll be over. You won't even know what hit you when you fall into his clutches. The more I look at that passage, the more I know what it means. We need to be careful with that, but that's how it works. And again, looking at the text, we need to recognize, to defend and protect ourselves, the methodology of that. We need to know how it works, what James is saying, what Peter is saying about how Satan works. Well, that brings us to the third point, addiction. And addiction is really, you know, you're attracted, you tolerate it, you're into it, and really addiction means you're just going to accept it. You're just going to live in it. You're not going to do any battle with sin. We want whatever it is, and we're going to do it. And that's your life. And once that happens, once you're addicted to it and there's no battle, Satan definitely has won. God has lost the battle, and we just tolerate the stuff in our minds, and we just do whatever we want. It's just letting loose. 1 John chapter 2. John says this, verse 15. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Don't love the world. Now, that world there is the same as in what Shane read. Or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that's in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of possessions, it's not from the Father, but it's from the world. The world's passing away, along with its desires. But he says, whoever does the will of God abides forever. The world here composed of 3 things: the lust of the world, the temptation of the world. Now, what's the profit of man if he gained the whole world? When he says that, and again, that's the things of the world. It's not a political thing. The world, the things that the world offers, composed of 3 things: lust of the flesh. Satan's done a great job of that. Everybody knows where 7th Street is in Parkersburg. I was in high school. I used to drive down 7th Street and go to City Park. All those places that you see, man, you wouldn't pull in there for anything. You know why? Because somebody'd see you. You didn't want to be seen in those places. You don't want to be seen in the parking lot of those places. Everybody knew what that part of town was. Satan's done a masterful job. You can do all that in your living room now. Not have to worry about a thing. Now, that's pornography. Lust of the flesh. Now, let's call it light pornography. I'll tell you something. That's everywhere. He's done a great job with that. Light pornography. I don't know if there's a term like that or not. But it's on your newsstands. It's on your TV. It's on every commercial that you see. And there's a growing acceptance of that. And it doesn't even faze us a lot of times. And you know what? Why did Lot pitch his tent toward Sodom? Why did he do that? You ever think about that? It's because the Bible, God wants you to know that he took steps in the wrong direction. And I'll tell you what we can do. We can argue every lesson. I can have every lesson on tendency and the tendency to sin and where that might lead. We can have all kinds of discussions about that. Turn your television on, turn it off. Turn the computer on, turn it off. What kind of reading material do you have in your house? Do you have spiritual things, ungodly things? All of those things fall in the term of lust of the flesh. We need to learn. We need to learn spiritual things. We need to rightly divide the truth. We need to go into it. We need to spend time with it. Less on leisure time, more on spiritual time. The lust of the flesh. Of course, he looks at it there in the lust of the eyes. If you see it, you got to have it. Those eyes got to be fulfilled. There's all kinds of things out there that he's doing this with. We need to have that. We fall short in a lot of areas with that. Vainglory of life. Every time I turn on TV, there's another superstar that makes $1 billion a year throwing a football, and he's getting arrested for drugs or stuff. They're above the law. They don't, you watch that. Now, the English Standard Version says the pride of possessions, but it is the pride of life, the vainglory of life, those things. We need stuff. We got to have all that to satisfy our life. Well, if you gain it all, the whole world, all of it, all the flesh, all the lust of the flesh, all the lust of the eyes, all the vainglory of life. You've got all of those things now, but if you have not the love of God, what do you have? What will a man give in exchange for his soul? To give here is to give in exchange. It is to bargain. It is to trade. It is to swap. They're going to make an exchange here. Now, I looked at the text and I think, you know what? What does this remind me of? And we all remember Solomon's quest. And all the wisdom that God gave him. And what he does really is he takes that God-given wisdom and actually just looks like through a prism and sees all the coloration, sees all of the various hues of the world, all the attachments, all the attractions of the world. And he's looking at, and he ran all those things, and he comes to conclusions about life. What's it worth to a man to get great goods? What's it worth to a man to have many riches? And by intense effort, have great respect, and have all the people, and have people in control of yourself. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Notice what he says. Verse 17. He says, Ecclesiastes 2, let's go ahead and read verse 16. 15. What happens, he says, to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart, what is this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance. Seeing that the days to come all will have been forgotten. How the wise dies, he says, just like the fool. What if I get all this done? What if I get all this stuff and accumulate all these things? What if I have all the possessions and I get everything I can imagine? Solomon asked the same question. What does it profit a man? And you look at that, just that part of it. What's the profit of man if he gains all of those things and he loses his soul? Even worldly wisdom, not Solomon, not the Bible, not anything. Even worldly wisdom says you're going to pass on and leave it to somebody else that hasn't even worked for it. And that's what he's saying there. Secondly, what's it worth by great expenditure and effort and energy to have control over many, to have control, to have power, the high place that many people are after? Look in the first chapter, verse 3. Solomon says, what does a man gain by all the toil? A generation goes and a generation comes. The earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun goes down, hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south, goes to the north, around and goes to the wind. The circuits of the wind return. Jet stream, I think you've heard that. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, they flow again. All things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun, he says. Is there a thing of which is said, see, this is new? It's already been. He said it's already in the ages before us. There's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be remembrance of later things, yet to be among those who come after me. What he's saying here, if you're just involved in the world, if the world's it for you, tell you what Solomon said, you're just involved in one big monotonous bore. That's all you've got. That is just one big monotonous bore. There's nothing to it. There's no substance to it. There's no quality in it. Life is just one big cold front after another. Now, I don't know where it is for you, but I can promise you that there's another cold front coming. And you can look at how things work. And they've always worked that way. And he goes from the evaporation, and it goes up, and it rains in those little streams, and it goes into the bigger streams. It goes to the oceans. It won't fill up. And you know what? Yeah, we've got all kinds of new gadgets, the iPhone thingies and all the clicks and all those things. But you know what? If we didn't have people have the brains to make those things, we wouldn't have those things to operate, would we? So those things aren't really new when you think about it. But if all of your life is in that, what have you profited? What have you, he runs through that prism and he looks at it and he says there's nothing to it. And that he promises you that someday all of you, there'll be no remembrance of us. Somebody's going to say Elvis Presley one of these days, Diane. And then somebody's going to say Elvis who? Yeah. No remembrance. All will not be remembered. So, if by great energy and great effort you get all these things and get control of all these things, what does it profit a man? What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? What if by tireless training and effort and all that you do, you distinguish yourself and you become so widely known in your endeavor and the field that you're in? Look what he says in verse 14. I've seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all's vanity, all striving for the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience in wisdom and knowledge, and I applied to my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this was also striving, he says, after the wind, for in much wisdom is much vexation. And he who increases knowledge, he says, increases sorrow. Solomon knows what he's talking about. And he's seen the principles of life. He knows what they are. You want to explain life to me? You want to explain what life's about? Can you put it in a test tube? Can you hold it up to the sun? Can you see what it is? You know what it is? What happens when a man dies? His physical body's there. It looks the same. There's no life in it. There's no life there. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. There are some things that, you know what, we're not going to know. We're not going to be able to figure out. And what he says here reminds me of a German proverb. It says, much wisdom causes a headache. And you know what? That's not too far from the truth. That's not too far from the truth. Sometimes, the more things you have on your mind, the more things that you know, wears you down. I'm not saying to the young people or anyone, get the education, go to college, seize every opportunity that this world gives you to better yourself, to educate yourself, to do all of those things that you can do. All of us, the opportunities that God gives us, we're required to grasp them and do everything that we can with them. But what if you get handed that degree and you walk off that stage and you drop dead? What then? If you become the richest man in the world and the stock market just hinges whether it's going to go up or down on what you say. If you become the most powerful man in the world and armies are started up by your command, navies sail because you say sail. If you have all of that power, if you become so famous that even people in third world countries, India, knows your name, all of that, you miss heaven, you miss it all. What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? If you're here tonight, I would ask you that you put your focus on the Lord. That's what this text is all about. Not on you, on the Lord, not on your will, on His will. There's profit in it. There's a life in it. There's something to be gained from the investment that you put in it that you can't put any dollar value on anywhere in this world. Focus on the Lord. Do what He says. Do what He asks. The payoff is unbelievable. Unbelievable. If you're here tonight and never obey the gospel, Jesus said, he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. Please come, as together we stand and sing the song of invitation.